You awaken beneath the ashes of a dying empire, not in triumph, not in terror, but in stillness, the kind that hums low in your bones, like the last note of a forgotten lullaby. Sand sticks to your eyelids. Wind moans through the ribs of fallen ships. The sky above is a pale, bruised violet, and it does not remember what came before. You do not know your name, but the stars do. You walk barefoot over fractured durasteel, your fingers trailing across the torn veins of a war machine long collapsed. This was once a star destroyer, proud, immense, cruel. Now it is a home for moss, wind, and half-buried prayers. You find a child's doll made from stormtrooper armor shards, its eye sockets painted with soot. Someone once played here. Someone once believed in safety. Your breath fogs in the morning chill. It smells of plasma dust and rusted wiring. You follow it, your own breath, like a trail leading deeper into memory. Here lies a camp, makeshift, stubborn, alive. Tents sewn from resistance flags. Fires fueled by engine coils. People who laugh in soft tones, whose faces glow orange in the dusklight, who stir pots of foraged root stew like their mothers once did on planets now destroyed. They do not ask your name. They see something in your eyes. They nod. Woman with silver in her braids hands you a bowl. Inside it, dried vibroto, grain paste, fermented fungi. It tastes of survival, of old wars softened by time. You eat slowly, reverently. Every bite feels sacred. You sleep beneath the wing of a downed X-wing, its fuselage still smelling faintly of Leah's command. Above you, constellations pulse like old gods watching a second beginning. You do not feel fear, only ache. Ache that this quiet, broken place feels like home. Dreams come in fragments. A hand reaching, a saber falling, a child crying in a white corridor, and a throne, cold, golden, gleaming, with no one brave enough to sit. You wake with tears on your face and sand in your mouth, but you remember something now, not a fact, a feeling. The galaxy did not die. It sighed, and you are walking through its breath. You follow. Metal tracks left by old repulsor lift sleds. They snake between half-buried TIE fighters and scorched banners bearing the crest of the final order. You pause before one, brushing away the ash dot there painted crudely in red is a symbol, a Jedi star. Cracked but not erased. You kneel. You place your hand upon it, and the Force, long silent, stirs like a ripple in still water. It welcomes you home, but it will not make it easy. You move onward, past scavenger altars built from melted lightsaber hilts and kyber fragments, past the ruins of a holocron library, where Rey once stood and whispered forgotten truths to broken students who dared to listen. You find a cave, not deep, not dark, but humming softly, rhythmically, as if the stone itself remembers inside it. A chair carved from starship bone, a journal burned along the edges, a saber hilt wrapped in cloth. You do not take it, not yet. You sit, and for the first time in cycles uncounted, you listen, not with ears, with soul, and the galaxy, like a wounded animal, curls beside you. It does not ask for healing, only remembrance. You close your eyes, you breathe, and within that breath, Rey walks again, Finn laughs again, Leia stands again, Ben kneels again. You do not change the past, You walk through its ashdot and find seeds. You rise before the camp stirs, before the wind begins its morning whisper, before the suns stretch their light across the carcass of a broken war. The sand is cool beneath your feet, kissed by shadow and memory. You walk past sleeping forms wrapped in cloaks woven from resistance scrap, past fires gone cold in engine shells, past BB units dozing with one optic dimmed. The desert holds its breath. You walk farther than before, to the edge of the canyon, where metal bones pierce the earth wreckage of a transport that never made it to Exegol. Its final command still etched into a blackened panel. Hold the line. You trace the letters with your thumb and feel the echo of desperation, of valor, of choices made in silence. This is where they lived, the forgotten ones, not the heroes written in holobooks or praised in chants, but the ones who carried power couplings through gunfire, who dragged the wounded from burning decks, who whispered bedtime stories in the dark. Two orphans who never asked to be brave. You sit on a twisted beam and close your eyes, and in that stillness you begin to see them. They lived without ceremony. Each day was a stitch in a garment no one would see finished. They rose early to ration packs, scraping the last grains of starch from foil linings, saving spice and sweetness for those who had bled. Water was gathered in cloth filters tied to antennae, catching the dew that hung between starlight and heat. Bathing was rare, sacred, done in shared basins beneath rusted solar panels. Children lined up barefoot, laughing despite the grit. Their games were not of war. They built sand cities and spoke to lizards. Their laughter was louder than any blaster. They slept in repurposed storage compartments, curled beside each other like roots in warm soil. One girl kept an old datapad with drawings of Naboo and dreamed of swimming. One boy wore a flight helmet 5 sizes too large and called himself General Skywalker. They did not remember the Republic. They did not fear the Sith. They only knew nightfall meant stories and the low hum of lightsabers cradled in the mines. Of those who dreamed of peace, the elders told tales in murmurs about a man who once vanished into exile with a map hidden in stars, about a princess who never stopped leading, even as her heart cracked like glass under pressure, about a stormtrooper who said no to programming and yes to pain. You imagine the stories as they were told, not grand, but fragile, not flawless, but true. Each name passed like a torch in the dark. Rey, Finn, Poe, Rose, Ben Chewbacca, C-3PO, names that lived longer than flesh. Names that grew into symbols because no monument had been built, only memory, only firelight. You walk further, to the canyon where old A-wings rest beneath tarps, now used for drying herbs and strip-grown moss. There, a woman tends to roots. Her hands are lined with age, but her eyes shine like moons. She tells you without words how the resistance learned to farm after war. They used hydrospines and recycled coolant to create moisture fields. They harvested insects for protein. They crushed red stones to mix into soil and sang to the vines so they would not grow lonely. You help her pull a crooked stem, and it comes away with ease. She smiles, nods once, and returns to her work. Nothing is wasted. Even silence is sacred here. At midday, you sit with a group beneath the shadow of an old Jedi cruiser. They share their meal with you, sun-baked root slices, cracked nut paste, and a sphere of pickled sea fruit traded from a merchant who walks the outer rim with stories in his beard. One man says he once saw Lando Calrissian dance in a cantina on Kijimi before it was dust. Another swears he saw Rey train with Leia beneath a thunderstorm so fierce the lightning bowed to them. No one questions truth here. Belief is its own form of power. You listen more than you speak. You are still learning how to belong. That night, the sky spills fire. A meteor shower, like liquid crystal, falls across the dark, and everyone gathers. Outside the tents, blankets are wrapped, mugs are passed, shoulders touch without shame. Someone plays a hollowed pipe made from the shaft of a destroyed blaster. The tune is slow, mournful. You watch a child point to a streaking light and whisper, "That one's Rey." Another points to a second, "That's Ben." The adults do not correct them. The dead deserve a place in the sky later. You are called by the mechanic, the one with oil-streaked hands and eyes that see through lies. She leads you to a hidden alcove beneath the wreck of an old medbay ship. Inside, a shrine glows faintly. Lightsabers, holoprojectors, pieces of old robes, a braid tied with copper wire, one of Leia's rings cracked. These are not relics. These are pieces of grief held in reverence. You kneel without being asked, and the Force hums gently in your chest like a bird finding its perch. The mechanic places something in your hand, a stone shaped like a Kyber shard, smooth from years of worry. She says nothing. She does not need to. Sleep comes slowly that night. You lie beneath the stars with your eyes open, heart full. The wind carries a whisper, not words, but weight, a pulse of something more. You let it enter you, not as a weapon, not as a lesson, as a companion. And in the dark, you realize the Force never left. It only changed shape. It became bread, breath, laughter, soil, story, loss, and light. It became you. You curl into yourself, blanket pulled to your chin, and drift. The dream is quiet. This time, you are not watching. You are living. You fly a battered freighter across the clouds of Bespin, chasing echoes. You sit beside Rose as she plants seeds on a scorched moon. You walk with Rey through a field of wildflowers on a planet without name. She speaks to the ground, asking forgiveness for wars it never chose. You help her build a cairn of memory. From shattered helmet fragments, no words are spoken, only presence. You hand her the Kyber stone. She smiles. You wake with that smile pressed to your ribs like sunlight, and the sky is already blue. You wake to the scent of firewood and the hush of wind curling around old bones of steel. The sky has shifted, deeper now, tinged with storm. Clouds move like thoughts, unspoken, heavy with a kind of remembering. You stand slowly, joints still, filled with dream. Around you, the camp exhales into motion, quiet, purposeful. Blankets are folded, fires rekindled, whispers passed like sacred texts between hands. A traveler has arrived, they say, one who remembers the stars from before. They broke. You follow the current of movement, drawn not by duty, but by a subtle ache beneath your sternum. You reach the center, where a circle has formed, and there stands the traveler, wrapped in faded robes, a face carved by time and sun, but eyes clear as hyperspace. In their hand is a box, not locked, not sealed, just waiting. They do not speak at first, only open it. Inside, pieces, a cracked holocron, a scrap of parchment with Jedi runes, a broken resistance pin, and a single glove, frayed black, once belonging to a man who forgot his name before remembering it mattered. The traveler places the box in the sand and sits. The others follow. You do too. And then they begin to speak. Their voice is low, soft, like cloth brushing against stone. They tell of Ender's burning skies, of the victory that tasted like loss of decades stretched thin with silence, while empires changed masks but not hearts. They speak of Leia, her eyes fierce, her hands tired, her hope defiant. Of Luke, not the myth, but the man who once milked alien beasts and wept into the sea. Of Rey, not as savior, but as seeker, as someone who asked questions no one dared voice. You do not blink. Each word presses against your ribs like breath held too long. When the traveler speaks of Ben, the camp grows still. The sand listens. The stars dims. They say he was neither monster nor martyr, but both. That he died not to save, but to return. That in his end, the Force sighed with sorrow. A child who was never allowed to be only a child. You feel something sharp unfold in your chest, not grief, not pity, but kinship, as if part of you died with him, and part of him woke with you. As the fire crackles, the traveler lifts the broken holocron and holds it toward you. You do not hesitate. Your fingers brush its jagged edge. Light spills out, faint, fractured. And you see a forest drenched in blue mist, a saber igniting beside a whisper, a kiss not born of romance, but of release, a hand reaching across death, a life surrendered like an apology. And then, a child born in the shadow of that surrender. The image fades. The camp is silent. The traveler nods. No more needs saying. Later, as dusk swells into violet, you walk alone into the valley of wreckage. The bones of ships form cathedrals of loss. Here lies the TIE dagger that fell over Pisana. There, the trooper transport from the Battle of Crate, all frozen in collapse. You kneel before a half-buried Resistance X-Wing, its hull scorched with time. You place your hand upon it and whisper, "Thank you for what you do not know." But the metal responds with a soft hum, as if it remembers you too. The night returns like a sigh. Fires flicker across the ridge. A soft song drifts through the air, one of mourning, one of movement. You do not understand the words, but the meaning wraps around your spine. It speaks of continuation, of things not ending, merely folding into different shapes. You sit with the mechanic one last time. She gives you a piece of fabric. Inside it, the Kyber stone you once held, now tied to a thin band of braided copper wire. "It's yours," she says, finally breaking her silence. "It always was." You want to ask who you were, who you are, but the wind answers first. You are the echo. You are the seed. You are the breath that comes after war, the silence that teaches how to speak again. You hold the band in your hands and nod. Sleep does not come easily that night. It is layered with visions. A Jedi temple rebuilt, not in stone, but in sand and vine. A lightsaber with a white blade held by hands that know mercy more than anger. A desert child grown into a voice that softens planets. You wake before the sun's rise and do not pack. There is nothing to carry. The memories live inside you now. You walk to the edge of the camp, past tents that still breathe with dreams, past fires still warm from laughter. The traveler is gone. The shrine remains. You press your palm against it one last time, and the force moves through you like water through ancient roots. You walk into the distance, not away from this place, but deeper into its purpose. You do not need coordinates. The stars are your inheritance now. The force, your compass. The galaxy waits, not for a warrior, not for a hero, but for a witness. And you, who walked through ash and silence and story, are ready to remember louder. You do not look back. The ruins will hold their breath for someone else. The light does not shout. It simply continues. You are born into the breath of dust and silence, not in the cradle of song or the softness of arms, but beneath the blazing stare of twin suns and the bite of wind that does not apologize. Jakku is not your mother, but it raises you. It gives you no warmth, only survival. It does not teach you how to love, only how to stay alive long enough to wonder if love was ever real. You live in the hollow belly of a fallen Atat walker, its ribs rusted, its bones exposed to starlight. The metal groans in the night, as if still remembering the war it died in. You sleep on metal plates, softened by old netting, wrapped in fabric, stolen from wrecks and barter piles. Each morning, you wake to a world that does not welcome you, but also does not try to erase you. That, too, is a kind of kindness you scavenge. That is your religion. You crawl through the skeletons of ships once mighty enough to split skies, now swallowed by sand. You slide through vents, cut open panels, pull out wires like nerves from a corpse. You trade metal for rations, a quarter portion if the weight is right. Unker Plut weighs your soul on a cracked scale. He grunts. You do not flinch. This is the rhythm. This is the songless lullaby of existence on a planet where hope has no currency. You count your days by the sun and your nights by the sound of nothing. And yet, there is something that stirs when the wind shifts, something that does not belong to the dust or the silence or the hunger. It sings to you not loudly, but with patience, like it knows you will one day be ready to listen. You build small things when the stars come out, shapes from scrap, dolls with faces made of screws, a pilot helmet that doesn't fit but feels like a crown. You sit beside your fire and hum songs you've never been taught. Sometimes you whisper stories to yourself, as if trying to remember who you were before you forgot. A name rises, sometimes Ray, but it floats without weight. It feels borrowed, like a promise left on your doorstep. You cling to it anyway. You paint it on the wall of your walker home with grease and ash. Names matter, even when no one else speaks them. You watch ships fly overhead and feel something in your bones try to follow. You do not know what it means to belong to a sky, but you feel the ache of it every time an engine roars above, and you are still here, grounded by rust and ration cards. You dream of green, not data screens or oxidized hulls, but real green, soft green, the kind that grows from soil and doesn't have to prove itself. You've never touched it, but you miss it like a mother. Sometimes you see others, scavengers, traders, raiders. They pass like shadows, brittle and hungry. You keep your distance. You've learned that people, like sandstorms, only bring damage when when too close. Still, there are moments. A boy once handed you a piece of dried fruit without asking for trade. An old woman once whispered a blessing in a language that sounded like rain. Moments, small ones. You tuck them away like charms. Your staff is your spine. You carved it from the frame of a speeder, no longer capable of running. You etched stars into its side, not constellations, just guesses. When you walk, it keeps rhythm with the silence. You know how to fight, not because someone taught you, but because the desert demands it. You have scars you don't remember earning. You wear them without ceremony. Everything you are has been sharpened by abandonment. You do not ask questions about your family anymore. At first, you did. When you were small, you searched the faces of traders, hoping to see your own eyes. You listened for voices that might crack your name like it meant something. But time is a thief, and it stole the edge of that hope until all that was left was waiting. Not hoping, not searching, just waiting. You scratch lines into the wall. Days, years, a record no one else will ever read. One night, you climb the sand dune west of the ship graveyard. You bring no light. You bring no reason. You sit at the top and let the wind push against your face like an ancient hand. And there, beneath the spine of the galaxy, you hear it, not with your ears, with your bones. A hum, a vibration, like something buried beneath the stars is calling to you. Like you are not alone in your longing. You do not cry. The desert does not know what to do with tears. But something inside you breaks, not in despair, but in awe. You return to your shelter and cannot sleep. You stare at the ceiling and feel the space around you stretch. The walker that once felt like a coffin now feels like a cocoon. The stars do not promise safety, they promise awakening. And somewhere inside you, the force breathes for the first time in years. The next day, the scavenging is harder. Plut cheats you more than usual. Raiders circle closer. A storm ruins your water filter. You cut your hand on a sharp edge and wrap it with torn cloth, but none of it touches you. Not truly, because beneath the pain there is something blooming, a certainty that you are meant for more than survival. That the galaxy is not just a machine of hunger and ash. That the story you've lived is only the prologue. You whisper to the void, I am Ray. It is the first time you say it, like a declaration instead of a question, and the stars, distant, cold, immeasurable, answer, not with thunder, not with miracles, but with silence that finally feels like listening. You do not know how change arrives until it already has. It does not come with ceremony or prophecy, only with the faint crunch of boots across sand and a sound your heart somehow recognizes before your mind does. A distant scream, mechanical, wounded, a droid in trouble. You run before thinking, instincts blooming like sunbursts behind your ribs. The desert parts to reveal BB-8, round and trembling, half sunken into a net spun by scavengers who wear their greed openly. You do not speak, you only move. Your staff whistles through air and meets flesh. You are fast, efficient. You have fought for water, for silence, for shelter. You can certainly fight for something small and bright and afraid. When they flee, cursing, you crouch beside the droid and touch its domed head. It hums back, not in words, but in relief. You tell it to follow you. It does. Just like that, the silence of your days breaks open, not into noise, but into companionship. BB-8 rolls beside you, warbling questions you cannot answer. You learn its language, slowly, tilt, tone, hesitation. It speaks with body and beep. At night, it settles near your bed, quiet except for the occasional twitch of its antenna, like a child learning to sleep again. You don't tell it, but it reminds you of something you'd forgotten. Not someone, something. The warmth of knowing that someone or something stays near, even when you have nothing to give in return. You return to scavenging, but the days are different now. BB-8 watches you work, chirps warnings when metal slips, sings softly while you pull at ship guts. Plut notices. His eyes narrow. He wants the droid. You say no, it's not a decision. It's a knowing. BB-8 has become something sacred, a tether, a signal, a promise in orange and white. You guard it like a breath you're not ready to exhale. And then, just as you begin to believe this strange new rhythm could last, it changes again. A boy arrives. He is not from here. His clothes are wrong to clean. His eyes dart like prey. You do not trust him, but BB-8 rolls toward him like a child returning to an older sibling. The boy says his name is Finn. He says little else. He is made of nerves and sweat, and something buried deep behind his jaw. Something he's running from. You recognize it. The way he doesn't look up when the First Order is mentioned. The way he flinches when the sun hits something too sharp. You've seen people like him before, but none of them have ever saved a droid like BB-8, and none of them have looked at you like you're more than desert dust. Soon after, the sky breaks, not metaphorically, not gently. Real ships, real screams. The First Order descends like a closing fist. You run, not out of fear, out of momentum. Survival is an old rhythm. You move through it like breath. The boy follows. The droid rolls. You find a ship, a bucket of bolts. By sand, humming with stubbornness. The Millennium Falcon. You don't know its name yet, but it knows you. It lets you in. You take the controls. Finn panics. BB-8 clings. And for the first time, you rise into the sky, into the fire, into your story. Flight is not like you imagined. It is louder, angrier, but also truer. You move like someone who's done this before. Your hands remember levers before your mind names them. The falcon groans, then sings. And when you land, far from Jakku, far from ration packs and sleeping, in the bones of machines, you feel something unravel inside you. You are no longer waiting, you are moving. Maz's castle, Starkiller base, lightsabers, visions. It comes too fast, too sharp. You are pulled into a galaxy that has been spinning without you, and suddenly it wants to know your name. Not because of who you are, but because of who you might be. People look at you like you're a riddle they forgot how to solve. Han Solo dies. Leia embraces you. The Force begins to hum louder now, not just in temples and trees, but in your palms, your spine, your eyes when you close them. You meet Kylo Ren. He is not what you expected, not monster, not man, not yet. His face is fury shaped like a mask. His voice is a wound, but his eyes, they know something, not you. Something older, something beneath your skin. When your minds touch, you see things you weren't meant to. His past, his pain, his pull, and he sees yours. It frightens you, the way you reflect each other. You do not love him, not then, but you cannot ignore the tether. You meet Luke Skywalker. He is not what you expected, either, not savior, not myth, a man tired, angry, holy. He drinks from strange creatures, ignores you for days, then stares at the sea like it might forgive. Him, you ask for training, he refuses. You ask again, he relents, but his teaching is not in sabers, it is in breath, in cliffs, in the way you sit for hours, watching nothing until the nothing breathes back. You learn that the force is not fire, it is tide, it is root, it is balance. You learn to feel the galaxy as a body. You learn to listen, and still, Kylo calls. With words, with silence. He does not ask you to come. He opens a door, and you walk through. You stand before Snoke. You stand beside Ren. You ignite a saber and swing it through the throat of a puppet. For a moment, you believe you've won. For a heartbeat, you believe in him. But he reaches for power, not you. He offers a throne. You refuse. You leave, broken again. And still, you rise. Leia holds your hand. Finn holds your hope. The resistance folds you into itself like a page finally found. You fly. You cry. You begin to believe. But you do not yet know who you are. That question still waits in the dark, still humming, still hungry. You carry the question with you like a wound that refuses to close. Not just who you are, but why you are. Every battle deepens it. Every death sharpens it. You see ghosts now in the spaces between moments. Han's last breath falling like snow in the silence. Luke's form dissolving on a stone where the sea never forgets. Leia's eyes holding the weight of galaxies even as they begin to fade. You feel her hand in yours as her final breath passes into the Force, not as an end, but as a bridge. She was the last to look at you and see only you, not bloodlines, not legacies, not fear, just you. And yet, it is your blood that begins to speak louder now. You hear the whispers of your name not from friends, but from shadows. Palpatine, the syllables rot on your tongue. It does not feel like ancestry. It feels like poison. The dark does not seduce you. It stalks you. You see it in the mirror, in the crackle of your fingertips, in the way the earth recoils when your anger slips loose. You see yourself on a throne, carved from bones and fear, your voice a storm. You see yourself alone, but something in you refuses, not in rebellion, not in denial, in clarity. You know what power is. You've held it. You've tasted its hunger. You know that true strength does not come from lineage or lightning, but from choice. You run to Octu, not to hide, but to stop yourself, to silence the chaos with stillness. The island welcomes you like a returned memory. The cliffs remember your feet. The trees hush around your breathing. You burn the ship. You throw the saber. And the ghost of Luke Skywalker rises from the fire, not with scorn, but with understanding. He tells you that fear is not failure, that his greatest mistake was believing the past could be erased, that you are not him, and you are not Palpatine. You are Rey, just Rey. And that, perhaps, is enough. He hands you Leia's saber. The hilt is warm, like it waited for you. The Force circles you gently, not as command, but as invitation. You reclaim the Falcon. You reclaim yourself. And you go to face the dark. Exegol is not a place. It is a wound. It is a sky stitched shut, a cathedral of rot, a monument to power misunderstood. You feel it before you see it, the pulse of unnatural life, the breath of machines built to mimic gods. You walk into its heart, and there he waits. Not man, not monster, a memory that refused to die. He calls you granddaughter. He calls you heir. He stretches his voice into prophecy, offering you the throne as if it were a cradle. And for a moment, the galaxy holds its breath. But then you hear them, the voices not from outside, from within. Leia's patience, Luke's sorrow, Finn's courage, Poe's defiance, Han's smirk, Rose's truth, Ben's ache. They do not speak in speeches. They simply remind you who you are. They remind you what you chose when no one else believed in you. And then he is there, Ben, not as Kylo Ren, not as Vader's shadow, but as himself. He fights for you, not beside you, for you, against his past, against his blood, against the quiet lie that he could never be anything else. You face Palpatine together. He knocks Ben down. He drains you. Your knees hit the stone. Your vision blurs. And then you remember the voices, all of them, the Jedi, the ones who came before. They rise in you like a tide. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You rise. You cross the sabers. You reflect the storm. You watch him unravel, not into dust, but into silence. And when it is over, you do not cheer. You do not cry. You walk to Ben. His breath is shallow. His eyes are open. And for the first time, they are not searching. He smiles. You touch his face. He gives his life back to you, not as redemption, but as offering. You kiss him, not as a lover, but as someone who knows the weight of solitude. He fades. You hold him until the end, and then you return to the light. The resistance survives. The war ends. The galaxy breathes. But you do not vanish into glory. You do not claim thrones or titles. You take the falcon and you fly. You return to Jakku one last time. You visit the walker where you slept alone. You sit by the wall where your name still clings in ash. And then you fly again. You land on Tatooine, not because it is home, but because it once was theirs. You bury the sabers, Leia's, Luke's. You bury them beneath the twin suns, where Skywalkers once watched the future from a cliff. A woman passes, her eyes gentle. She asks your name. You pause. You think of all the names that could define you, all the bloodlines, all the ghosts. You look into the light and answer, Rey Skywalker. And the Force, like breath on your skin, agrees. You walk into the horizon, not as an heir, not as a savior, but as yourself. And for the first time, that is more than enough. You do not remember the first time the Force touched you. It was not a revelation, not a thunderclap or vision. It was a moment so soft you mistook it for breath, a stillness inside the noise, a hush beneath the scream. It came when you sat beneath the broken wing of a derelict fighter, blood drying on your palms, sand clinging to your lashes, and something inside you stopped reaching outward and turned inward. You thought it was fear. It was not. It was the Force, subtle, patient, waiting not to be found, but to be remembered. They say it binds all things, but no one tells you what that binding feels like. It is not glue. It is gravity. It is ache. It is the way your skin knows when someone is watching. The way the stars blink in rhythm with your chest. The way the water rises to meet your hands before you realize you were thirsty. And once it awakens in you, you see it everywhere. You see it in the cracks between stones, where vines twist upward in defiance. In the way children laugh at ruins, unafraid of the ghosts that sleep beneath them. In the pause before battle, when both sides stare and feel the same tremble in their bones. It is not light, it is not dark, it is the breath between the two. But those around you do not believe that. Not anymore. The galaxy is old and tired, and its people crave lines and labels. Jedi, Sith, good, evil. But the Force does not split cleanly. It fractures like glass beneath pressure. And each shard reflects a truth, a lie, a path you might follow, a self you might become. You feel that fracture growing inside you now, not as destruction, but as expansion. You remember when you first heard the Jedi speak of peace, how their voices carried both wisdom and regret. You remember Luke Skywalker's eyes as he said the order had to end, not in rage, but in mourning. You remember Ben Solo's voice in your mind, telling you that light and dark are just cages built by the dead. You did not believe him, you did not want to, but now you wonder. Not because he was right, but because he was broken in a way that mirrored you. You wander the remains of a Jedi archive, buried in the jungles of Yavin 4. The books are wet, the holocrons are cracked, but the walls still whisper. You run your hands along the stone, and it speaks in languages you do not know. But understand, the Force was never meant to be owned. It was not a weapon, it was not a code, it was breath. It was silence. It was the heartbeat between every scream. You sit there for hours, maybe days. You meditate, not to control, but to listen. And it begins to move through you differently, not in currents, in spirals, in weavings. You feel both the light and the shadow, and neither frightens you. A vision finds you. You are in a temple where the ceiling is a sky. Around you, mirrors. In each mirror, a version of yourself. One with eyes like fire, cloaked in black, thrown beneath her feet. One with bare hands, reaching to heal a dying stranger. One alone, surrounded by tombstones of friends never saved. One with a saber in each hand, dancing through battle-like song. One with no weapon at all, just breath. Just presence, just peace. You look into these mirrors, and none of them lie. None of them are false. Each could be you. Each is you. If the Force splits wrong, or right, or simply, inevitably, you wake with sand on your tongue and thunder in your chest. The falcon calls you. You fly again, not toward war, but toward history. You chase whispers across forgotten systems. Jeddah, Mortis, Ilum, worlds where the Force once screamed. You find temples buried in dust, statues with faces half erased, chants recorded in frequencies only your bones can hear. You find records of Jedi who left the Order not in shame, but in understanding. Of Sith who sought balance and were destroyed for it. You find writings etched in the language of trees, songs coded into water, and always, always, the same truth behind them all. The Force does not divide. The Force dances. It is we who are split. You land on a moon without a name, where the sky bends and the water glows. There, in a cave shaped like a spiral, you sit again. You place your saber beside you. You close your eyes. And in that silence, you do not reach outward. You reach inward. And within you, the Force is not one voice. It is a chorus. It is a storm. It is a cradle. It is your past and your future, and the place where your hands trembled the first time you held power. You see the girl on Jakku, alone and forgotten. You see the warrior in Snoke's throne room, angry and open. You see the wanderer on Octu, begging to be still. You see the woman on Exgal, defying her name, and you see what comes next. Not an ending, not a beginning, but a merging. You open your eyes, and the glass inside you is no longer broken. It is mosaic, and it shines. You walk through a galaxy, still learning how to breathe again. The war is over, that's what they say, and yet the silence it leaves behind feels heavier than fire. Planets rebuild, but not from memory, from confusion. People trade in rumor, in half-truths. Statues fall, then rise again under different names. Markets open where prisons once stood. Children are born who will never know the sound of blaster. Fire in the distance, and still their parents watch the sky as if it might catch fire again. Peace is a word spoken like a question, and in the midst of it all, you wander not as a hero, not as a symbol, but as something the galaxy no longer recognizes, a seeker. You do not wear robes. You do not preach. You do not carry your saber like a flag. It rests quietly on your back, like a memory you're not ready to bury. You visit systems that the war never touched, and yet they bear scars just the same. Isolation, famine, belief without balance. You help where you can. You listen more than you speak. You kneel beside those who weep, not with answers, but with presence. You offer no prophecy. You carry only stillness, and in time they begin to feel it, that strange warmth when you're near. The way their breathing slows, the way their fear dulls like metal left in the rain. They do not call it the Force. Most do not call it anything, but they know it's real, and they know it listens. You begin to see things more clearly now, not because the path is simple, but because you've stopped needing it to be. The Force does not tell you where to go. It moves with you, around you, within you, like wind across a lake, like music without beginning. Sometimes it leads you back to places that once hurt. Ender, where the trees remember laughter and ash. Crate, where the red salt still glows beneath the weight of forgotten feet. You return to Octu, not in exile, but in gratitude. You sit beneath the same stone where Luke once told you the Jedi must end. You do not argue now, you understand. It was never about ending the Jedi. It was about ending the idea that they alone could speak for the Force. You light no fires here. You leave no carvings. You simply sit, and the island accepts you. One night, beneath a sky thick with stars and silence, you dream of Ben Solo. He does not speak. He only walks beside you through fields of white. There are no ruins, no sabers, just quiet. He smiles, not as apology, not as sorrow, but as peace. You reach for his hand, and it is warm. When you wake, your eyes are wet, and the stone beneath you feels softer somehow. You say his name once, aloud, and the wind carries it across the cliffs like a prayer with no destination. You begin to write, not in ancient scripts or Jedi tongue, in your own voice, in scraps of cloth, in the margins of books, in the minds of those who sit with you long enough to listen. You do not teach with lessons, you teach with presence. A girl with burn scars on her hands learns to quiet her mind beside you. A former stormtrooper who cannot sleep sits near your fire and finally breathes without trembling. An old woman who has forgotten the names of her children remembers the stars when she hears your voice. These are not students, they are witnesses, and in each of them the Force flickers differently. Not brighter, not cleaner, just honestly. You visit a world covered in ocean. The people there speak with color, not sound. Their temples are underwater, carved into coral and whalebone. You are brought before one blind, ancient, skin-like stone who touches your forehead and smiles. You feel no fear, only recognition. They call you by no title. They call you mirror blood. They say you reflect what others hide, and what you reflect learns to see itself. You stay for weeks. You learn to speak in hue and light. When you leave, they gift you a shell shaped like a tear. You wear it around your neck. Years pass, or perhaps only seasons. Time is not what it once was. You feel yourself changing, not into something else, but into more of what you were always meant to be. The line between light and dark no longer cuts you. It sings through you. You use your saber less now, not from fear, but from peace. You plant things more often than you burn them. You carry seeds in your pockets, sometimes literal, sometimes not. You return to the moons of Ender and bury one beside the ruins of an old shield generator. A tree will grow there. You do not need to see it. One morning, a child approaches you. They cannot speak. Their eyes are wide, their hands fidgeting. You kneel. You hold out your palm. Slowly, their fingers meet yours. And in that touch, you feel it. A whisper, a ripple, the force, delicate and shy. You do not train them. You do not test them. You sit beside them in the dirt, and you draw circles until they smile. They return each day. They say nothing, but they listen. And in time, they begin to shine. You begin to sense a new fracture forming, not in the force, but in the stories told about it. Whispers of new orders, of saber-wielders who once again speak of war as justice. You feel the edge returning, the division, the fear disguised as certainty, and for a moment you ache. You wonder if your silence was mistaken for absence, if your gentleness allowed louder voices to rise again. But then you remember, the force is not noise. The force is not law. The force is not something you can claim. It is something you carry, and carry it you do. You write one final entry in the cloth-wrapped bundle you keep beside your bed. It is not a lesson. It is a memory of the first time you felt the force in your bones, of the first time you realized you were more than abandoned, of the first time you forgave yourself for surviving. You fold the cloth, wrap it in stone, and bury it beneath a tree whose name you do not know. You whisper, grow, and it does. You do not call yourself Jedi. You do not deny it either. You are simply Rey. And that is the only truth you need. You awaken on the edge of nowhere. And for the first time in what feels like years, you do not immediately rise. The wind brushes your cheek like the memory of a hand once known, and the sky above you is wide, unmarked, as though waiting for a name. You lie there in the quiet, heart still, mind soft, and allow the morning to arrive without urgency. Beneath your spine, the earth is warm. Around you, the gentle weight of grass, of time, of presence. You realize that the force no longer hums only within you. It surrounds you like breath, like light seen through closed eyelids, like lullabies never sung aloud. You sit up slowly. The sun paints your shoulders gold. Birds wheel in the distance. And for a moment, the galaxy is no longer wounded. It is simply vast. You walk without destination, feet moving to a rhythm beyond sound. There is no path, yet every footfall feels correct. You cross streams so still they reflect not just your face, but versions of you that once held rage, held fear, held fire. Now the reflection is still, not empty. Whole. The place you find is not on any map. A clearing bordered by stones, moss growing in ancient patterns, trees bowing gently as if in reverence. You feel the force thrum stronger here, not louder, just clearer, like a melody finely tuned. You sit at the center, fold your legs, place your hands on your knees. You do not call it meditation, you call it remembering. And in this stillness, everything returns. You remember your first breath on Jakku, lungs filled with dust and yearning. You remember the sting of hunger, the sharpness of cold metal, the taste of hope when you whispered your name to no one. You remember meeting Finn, the boy who ran from his past and sprinted into yours. You remember Han's death, how it split you open in ways the Force couldn't heal. You remember holding Leah's hand as she let go. You remember Ben, not his violence, not his mask, but his hand in yours, trembling human, and finally true. You do not cry. The tears have already fallen, in places no one saw, in nights too long to name. You do not ache. The ache has become a part of your rhythm. You breathe, and the galaxy breathes with you. A presence arrives at the edge of your awareness, not footsteps, not voice, just warmth. You do not open your eyes. You know who it is. Ben sits across from you in the clearing. He does not speak. He does not need to. The force between you is no longer confused. It is whole. He smiles, not the crooked, haunted smile of a boy trying to escape himself, but the quiet content, one of a soul at peace. You smile back. You both stay like that, still, together, part of something that no longer requires explanation. Then he fades, as gently as he came. But he leaves something behind, not power, not memory, stillness. You rise. You return to the Falcon and fly again, not as a wanderer now, but as a keeper. You go not where you are needed, but where you are called. Planets greet you like dawn. You step into villages where the people have forgotten how to speak of the stars without fear. You sit with them, you listen, and when they ask for hope, you do not give them promises or power. You give them presence. You teach them to close their eyes and feel the quiet rhythm that never left. You teach them not the Jedi way, not the Sith path, but the truth in between, the way of breath, the way of balance, the way of becoming. Children follow you sometimes. Some stay, some leave. You do not keep them. You offer only guidance. One builds a saber, not from Kyber, but from crystal washed ashore by a moonless tide. Another heals animals with nothing but her hands and humming. Another learns to disappear into wind and reappear where she is most needed. None of them ask to be Jedi. None of them wear the name. They do not need it. They carry the Force in ways the old galaxy forgot to bless. You learn from them. Their laughter teaches you more than ancient scrolls ever could. You return once more to the ruins of the old Jedi Temple on Yavin 4. The stone is cracked. The roots have broken through the floor. Vines hang from the ceiling like prayers never spoken. You kneel where the council once stood, not to rebuild, but to forgive, not the order, yourself. For once believing you had to become something to be enough. You touch the ground. The Force sings upward, not of conquest, not of salvation, of peace, of continuity, of threads woven quietly between stars. You light your saber one final time. The blade glows, not blue, not green, not red, not gold, like the light of dawn. You turn it off, you bury it, you no longer need it. The force is not in your weapon, it is in your breath, your presence, your open hands. It is in the way you sit beside someone and simply let them be. It is in the way you stand, grounded, even when the wind howls. It is in the silence that follows when fear is finally done speaking. You walk away from the temple, and the stars are already rising. You hear the galaxy whisper. It does not call you warrior. It does not call you savior. It calls you whole. And this time, you listen. You walk among ruins that remember you clearly, even as your own memory comes and goes like wind through torn cloth. The stones beneath your boots bear symbols that hum in your bones, though your tongue cannot shape their sound. You press your fingers into carvings so old they've become part of the weather, and still they warm beneath your skin. The air here is thick with silence, not the silence of emptiness, but of memory, dense, breathing, sacred. You find yourself on a world whose name you do not know, though your heart quickens as you cross its surface, as if retracing a path long buried. The buildings are bones, now curved spires and domes, crumbled into half-sunken skeletons, but their essence lingers like incense. Vines hang from windows once lit by council fire, and the wind plays a melody against the cracked glass that you almost recognize. You don't speak. You don't need to. The place speaks for you. You pass through an archway where two statues stand watch, robed, headless, weathered by centuries of starlight. Between them, the entrance yawns open. Inside, the air shifts, not colder, just closer. The temple wraps around you like a forgotten coat. There are no lights, only echoes. You move slowly, reverently, boots stirring dust that hasn't danced in ages. Beneath your feet, murals stretch across the floor, scenes of warriors and teachers, battles and births, sorrow and flight. They tell no single story, only pieces, fragments, like a song interrupted mid-verse. Still, something in them feels familiar. A figure with a staff, standing beneath a bleeding moon. A child cradling a glowing orb in trembling hands. A pair of eyes wide and searching, painted with a shade of brown you once saw in your reflection. You kneel beside the central altar. It is cracked, but not broken. You brush aside debris and uncover an etching. A circle of stars surrounding a hollow space. A map, perhaps, or a seal. You place your hand over it, and the stone breathes. It does not open. It does not move. But it remembers. You feel it, a pulse, faint but steady. The memory of something sacred, something lost. A voice, not external, but rising from inside you, says gently, "Welcome back." You do not ask who speaks. You simply bow your head. You do not remember building this place, but it remembers being built for you. You sleep that night beside the altar, wrapped in your cloak, head resting on the folded sleeves of time. You dream of a girl running barefoot through the halls, her laughter echoing like light on water. You dream of a council chamber filled with song instead of command. You dream of a saber splitting not air but silence. And you dream of exile, long, sorrowful, chosen not from shame but from duty. When you wake, your cheek is wet with tears. you did not feel falling. You begin to clean, not as a servant, as a keeper. Your fingers learn the cracks in the walls, and you patch them with moss and patience. You collect broken stones and stack them into small towers near the entrance, a ritual without origin, but full of meaning. You light candles shaped from native wax, and the smoke curls like language above the altar. Slowly, the space begins to live again. You do not teach, you do not summon, but life returns. A wandering creature, feathered, quiet, glowing slightly at the edges nests in the high beams. A young woman arrives, drawn by dreams she cannot explain. She does not ask for guidance. She sits across from you in the evenings and stares at the stars through the cracked dome. You never speak. You do not need to. Others come. Not in droves, not in fanfare, just one at a time, like raindrops. A man with eyes dulled by war finds peace in carving runes into the floor. A child who speaks to plants begins to grow vines along the inner walls, their leaves shaped like old words. A dancer from Karelia spins silently across the stones, her movements leaving trails of light that fade but never vanish. The temple becomes more than shelter. It becomes memory remade. Day, you discover a chamber hidden beneath the western corridor. You descend slowly, torch in hand. The air grows warmer, humming with a rhythm you cannot place. At the bottom, a pool, still silver, lit from within. On the walls, murals painted in light, shifting as you approach. They show not history, but possibility. In one, you see yourself old, surrounded by those who call you mentor. In another, alone again, wandering through stars. In another still, you kneel before a child whose eyes burn like stars, not in fear, but in awe. The force pulses stronger here. You kneel, touch the water. Visions rush you, not chaotic, just vast. You see galaxies not yet born. You see ruins not yet built. You see your face, calm and unburdened. And you understand this place was not made to teach. It was made to remember. You return to the surface different, not changed, clarified. You speak for the first time in weeks. A single word, stay. The word is not command. It is invitation. They do, and the temple breathes deeper. You do not rebuild the order. You do not take titles, but you carry the flame. You begin to write again, not lessons, but questions. What is the force when no one is watching? Who are we when we stop trying to be more than enough? Can peace exist without silence? You leave these writings in corners, under stones, behind doors. You let them be found or not. Not as it did before. Like breath in stillness. Like a memory that remembers you more clearly than you remember yourself. You wake before the others, as you often do now, not because sleep eludes you, but because the silence of the morning has become your closest companion. The temple lies still, beneath a canvas of starlight, your fingertips brushing the walls like a blind seer remembering, shape through memory. There is no hurry anymore, no schedule, no alarm. The galaxy is not calling you in the same way it once did, and that, too, is peace. You step outside into the morning fog, where the trees bend gently toward the temple, their branches cradling the sky like they are keeping watch. You fill the basin near the entrance with water, clear and still, and whisper words that mean nothing to most but everything to you. It is the first offering of the day, and it always begins with water. The young ones begin to stir as the light thickens and spills golden across the broken stones. They emerge in quiet groups, yawning, stretching, sharing touches and glances that speak more than any words could hold. They have become a family, though none of them arrived as such. You prepare tea from the herbs grown near the outer wall, its scent drifting upward, weaving through the dome like memory carried on heat. They sit around you now, as they always do, not as students before a master, but as witnesses gathered around a flame. You speak only when moved to speak. Today you say nothing. You pour the tea, one cup at a time, into mismatched vessels salvaged from forgotten places. A child named Miri, who once screamed at shadows, now hums softly as she draws spirals in the dirt. Rel, the oldest among them, sharpens tools in silence, his face roughened by years of exile, but his eyes gentler now than they've ever been. Taeon, who arrived broken and mute, tends to the moss garden, her hands as steady as truth. They do not ask for lessons. They do not recite creeds. Their lives are the teaching. They live fully, without fear of what they were. Without chains, you tell them, sometimes, that the Force does not choose sides, that it is not light or dark, right or wrong. It simply is. Like water, like wind, like a name spoken with love and let go with peace. Some of them nod, others do not respond. You never require belief, only presence. You walked the garden paths in the afternoon, where once only ruin lived. Flowers bloom here now, not in neat rows, but in the way nature prefers: chaotic, free, honest. A flock of sky creatures nest along the western ridge, their wings translucent, their cries like laughter trapped in a bottle. You smile as they rise and fall, always returning, always circling back. One lands on your shoulder. You do not flinch. It stays for a heartbeat, then flutters away. Every day, something like this happens. A new wonder, a forgotten pattern returning. The Force, not as spectacle, but as rhythm. You enter the old library now, a sanctuary for scrolls, for voices, for quiet. Many of the texts are unreadable. Others contain stories of those who once carried sabers and pride like shields, fighting wars that burned stars to ash. But buried between those tales are softer ones, journals, prayers, poems written by hands that once bled for peace. You spend time copying them onto fresh cloth, preserving them not as gospel, but as memory. A line from one echoes in your chest all afternoon. Asterisk, the Force is not power, it is permission. You think of that as the rain begins, soft, rhythmic, as if the sky has grown sentimental. The temple glows in the wet, the moss deepening in color, the cracks in the stone becoming art. You sit beneath the overhang and watch the droplets fall, listening to the chorus of a galaxy healing itself one breath at a time. Visitors still come, sometimes strangers, sometimes those from your past. Poe arrived once, older now, his face still brimming with stories and fire. He sat with you for a day, speaking of rebuilding, of hope, of all the small pieces of good that must be sown in. The soil war once scorched, you embraced, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. He left you a piece of the resistance banner, and you folded it carefully, tucking it beneath your sleeping mat. Finn came too. He stayed longer. He did not speak much at first, but his presence thundered with love, with questions, with purpose. One night, beside the fire, he whispered that he felt it now, the force, not just in battle, but in the moments between. You smiled and said, "That's when it speaks the loudest." He smiled back, and the fire cracked like applause. You think often of those who did not live to see this, of Leah's hands steadying you, of Luke's gaze stretched beyond time, of Ben's breath leaving him in your arms. You do not dwell, but you remember, not with flames, with silence. The children place stones in a spiral, each one etched with a symbol of someone they wish to honor. You add one of your own, a plain stone, unmarked, placed at the center. You do not say who it is for, but in the stillness, everyone knows. You light no saber, you raise no flag, but the force gathers around the spiral like wind folding into itself. You feel them, all of them, and you smile through the quiet ache at night. After the others have slept, you walk the outer rim of the temple. The stars above stretch endlessly, a blanket of light across the sky's dark breath. You look up and wonder how many names are written there, how many prayers carried, how many futures waiting to fall. You breathe deeply, fully. The force moves within you, not as current, but as home. You are no longer seeking. You are no longer resisting. You are simply here, and the ruins beneath your feet, once broken, once forgotten, stand tall again, not in defiance, but in welcome. You return to your chamber and rest, not as someone weary, as someone whole. You wake in darkness that does not frighten you, the kind of darkness that holds warmth rather than warning, the kind of darkness where seeds begin to break open, unseen beneath the soil. Around you, the temple sleeps. The air is still, the walls humming gently with the dreams of those who rest inside. You rise without sound and walk the corridor, barefoot, each step guided not by light but by memory. Outside, the stars are fading. Dawn is not yet visible, but its breath is beginning to shape the world. You walk to the garden. The dew has gathered beads of light on every blade of grass, every petal of the flowers that now grow wild around the outer walls. You touch one abloom with 3 soft points like the crest of an ancient Jedi symbol, and it folds briefly, as if recognizing you. You whisper thank you without knowing why, and the morning answers, taught today. The child returns, the one who never speaks, the one who came months ago with eyes like glass and hands that trembled at every movement. They sit across from you, legs folded, small palms pressed flat to the stone. You say nothing. You've never asked them to explain their silence. Some stories do not arrive in words. Their breathing deepens, their shoulders soften, the air shifts. You feel the force around them beginning to hum, soft and searching. You place your hand beside theirs, close but not touching. They look at you, wide-eyed but not afraid, and for the first time they close their eyes. The quiet that follows is profound. It's not silence, it's fullness, like a bowl filled with something sacred. When they open their eyes again, they do not speak, but they smile, and it is enough. You nod once, they nod back, then they rise, and walk to the northern edge of the garden, where the roots grow deepest. They sit beneath the tree you planted long ago, and you know they will return to that place every day from now on. Later, as the sun lifts gently across the horizon, casting gold over the ruins, the others begin to wake. They bring their morning offerings, water, woven branches, sketches, food they've foraged, and place them at the spiral near the altar. This ritual was never taught, it formed itself, a rhythm of thankfulness, of return. You place a single feather there this time, found at the base of your door before sunrise. It is iridescent, oddly warm. You do not question its meaning. You only add it to the circle. Tyone offers sweet root tea to everyone, and Miri draws constellations in ash across the wall, connecting dots that only she seems to see. No one corrects her. No one asks what they mean. All understanding here begins with trust. Visitors arrive at midday, a family from the outer moons, weathered but kind. The woman carries a child with a birthmark, shaped like a spiral. The man speaks of dreams, of hearing voices beneath trees, of waking with a name on his tongue that was not his own. You welcome them, not as guests, but as echoes. They stay for 3 days, sleep near the eastern stones, leave a small orb of carved wood in the offering spiral when they go. You place it gently on the shelf above your bed, not as a trophy, as a message. Everything given here lives again in some way. Rain comes at twilight, heavy, sweet, warm. You walk into it, fully clothed, arms open, face tilted to the sky. The others follow. Some dance, some run. Some simply lift their hands and let the water choose its path. You stand in the center of the temple courtyard, and the rain becomes memory. It washes your skin, your thoughts, your fears. For a moment, you remember it all. The heat of Jakku, the hum of a saber in your hand, the scream of Exegal's wind, the ache of names spoken too late. And then the rain softens, and you are only Rey again, not the scavenger, not the Skywalker, not the ghost of something saved. Just Rey, fully, completely. The name no longer hurts, it simply fits. That night you write, not for others, for yourself. A letter, maybe, a prayer, a seed of thought. You speak of the Force as you now know it, but as the thread that lets you feel when someone is sitting in grief without saying so, when someone across the stars is breathing just a little slower, when a child's laughter will arrive before it begins. You write that balance is not symmetry, it is surrender, the kind that makes peace with contradiction, that knows healing is not the absence of pain, but the permission to carry it gently. You sign no name. You fold the parchment and place it beneath the stone beside your bed, the stone that marks the place where Ben's memory lives. The Force rustles gently in the air, as if it too is reading. One of the younger ones asks you before sleep, will the Jedi ever come back? You do not answer right away. You place your hand on their head and whisper, they never left, they just changed. They blink slowly, not quite understanding, but they nod, as if something inside them does. The room falls into sleep. You stay awake a little longer. You listen to their breathing. You listen to the wind moving through broken windows, now covered in vines. You listen to the pulse in your own chest, slow, sure, true dot in the morning. You wake with the knowing that it is time to go. You do not feel sadness, only movement. The way water leaves a riverbed when the sky calls it elsewhere. You gather nothing. You leave no trail. You speak to the stones, to the roots, to the silence. They do not ask you to stay. They do not beg you to explain. They understand. You walk away from the temple as you once walked toward it, with open palms, quiet steps, and the Force unfolding like wings at your back. You will go. where you are pulled, where stories wait in the soil, where children still dream of balance, where the ruins have not yet remembered who they are. And when you arrive, they will know you, and you will know yourself again.